College Football 25 made its triumphant return this July, bringing joy to college football fans all over. But we ain't here to talk about that today. While there are certain features we all hope to see in the next edition of the game, in this video, I want to take a look at some features we will never or may never see again in the game from past games. Let's throw it all the way back to the glory days, PS2 and Xbox real quick. First up, we have my absolute favorite feature that I know for a fact will never return, custom signs. This one speaks for itself, and if you've watched some of the videos on my channel, you know this is one of my favorite old features on the game and one of the most out-of-pocket features that we will never see again. That's right, the Create a Sign feature. On the old PS2 and Xbox games, this feature was first introduced back around 2005, 2006. Based on certain situations in the game, you could create signs that fans in the stadium would display as those scenarios played out in your home stadium. The crazy part, these signs had no filter at all. You could put whatever you wanted on there with no repercussions. Of course, you could imagine where this would be problematic. This might be the one feature that I have 100% confidence that it will never, ever, ever return, although it would be hilarious. My favorite thing about this was putting some subtle shit talk in about your friends, then the sign randomly appearing while you were playing together when you had forgot about it. Fun times were had with this one. As you can see by all my signs, what would your custom sign say? Another old feature up next is another one I don't ever suspect we will see again, and that's player discipline. This was a really cool feature that might not have been one of the headlining additions to the game at the time of its release, but it certainly had an ability to impact your dynasty. Old gen NCAA football games had this feature in the dynasty mode that was based off of how much of a focus you put into discipline points each offseason and a player's discipline rating as well. Of course, the worse the rating was, the more likely the player was to get in trouble. The challenge lied in the fact that however many points you allotted to the discipline rating corresponded with how many hours you had to discipline players when they got in trouble. Of course, if you were trying to rebuild a program, you didn't want to put all your points into discipline, or really any for that matter. You wanted to spend them on recruiting and training. But if you were a buffoon like me and put 0 points or 10 points towards discipline, you have no points at all to discipline anyone. And if that happened, you then would start getting the interest of the NCAA. If enough players got in trouble, they could put your program on probation, which meant reduced scholarship, bowl suspensions. It was a really cool feature. It could get you in a lot of trouble, though, and ultimately fired if you didn't play your cards right. You can imagine where this would be problematic in today's age of the game series, where players have their likeness in the game. There was never anything too crazy in terms of what your players got in trouble for. I think the wildest thing I ever saw was some of my players get into a fight at the club. But other than that, it would be like academic things, cheating on an exam, plagiarizing, and then, of course, breaking team rules or missing workouts and meetings. But still, I'm sure players wouldn't want things attached to them, and that could be where the issue lies. Would be hilarious, though, to see Georgia players getting DUIs and reckless driving charges on the game, though. Just for the laughs, I tried to ruin the Georgia program and run it into the dirt, and they were so happy with my efforts that they actually offered me an extension. Go figure. If they ever brought this back, I'm running the dirtiest program imaginable. Player on my team busted for selling fentanyl in a school zone? 0 game suspension. We'll see you in court. Next up is one I could maybe see making a comeback because it actually makes sense and was kind of convenient and nice to have, assigning numbers at the start of each season. I think this has recently been changed, but I don't think it was possible at first on the new game on College Football 25, changing numbers of your players when you edit rosters or in Dynasty. The computer-generated players you could change as they come in, but the current players you can't. What if I told you on the old NCAA football games there was a screen at the start of each year of your Dynasty where you just assign numbers to incoming freshmen? Of course, this was before you could have 2 guys wearing 1 number, but still, it was a pretty cool thing. And it was convenient, all being located at this screen in the offseason. Another really cool aspect of this would be recruits you brought in requesting to wear a certain number or playing time or things of that sort. In the later iterations of the game, you could even promise things like, hey, we're going to win a national championship. I don't see why this couldn't be added to the game today, especially with the transfer portal already in it. Players back then were at risk of transferring when you made promises you didn't keep. That's even more of a thing today, obviously. Bring it back, EA. Moving on, let's look at a feature that I thought was pretty cool, although it could have used some work. Maybe this could be something we see again down the road. One of my favorite features on the old gen NCAA football games was the spring drill, spring game features. Nowadays, and even on NCAA Football 14, all you had was the training results where ratings were automatically added on. But back in my day, you had to grind for that. It didn't cover all positions on the team, like you couldn't do anything to improve your offensive linemen or kickers and punters, for example, but it covered most all other positions at the time with a variety of different drills that were super fun to play, and that added on ratings boost to the training results already. My favorite, of course, was the option attack and Oklahoma drills. It just doesn't get any better than that. But they had several drills you could do for quarterbacks, multiple wide receiver drills, some cool ones for running backs, and other defensive drills as well. Based on how well you did in those drills, you would get points to spend on certain attributes, improving your player's overall rating. This could definitely use a little depth, but I always enjoyed doing it. That wasn't the only thing you could do on your dynasty in the spring. They also had a spring game in itself, which kind of felt bare bones, but it offered an opportunity to actually get a feel for your team in a game scenario with the freshmen and new players that you brought in. You didn't receive a boost or anything to your ratings, but you did get a chance to look at your incoming talent without having to just throw them out there in a fire in a game scenario like on the new games. Last up, we have a feature that sadly, again, I can't see making a comeback ever, but it would be so cool if it did, and that's FCS Teams already built in the game. That's right, you did not have to get on Team Builder back in the day and download these teams. On the old PS2 and Xbox NCAA football games, it had most of the FCS teams already built in. Want to play an actual FCS team instead of having to play FCS Southeast? You could schedule Eastern Kentucky instead of having to play a fictional school. Now, of course, there were limitations to this. All these schools had generic stadiums that all looked the same and didn't have their own real stadiums, which kind of sucked, but I'd take that just so they could be in the game. Also, to my knowledge, they only had 2 jersey options. Some schools had more, but most just had the basic home and away options. Still, I think it was a cool add-on to have already included in the game and not having to download the Team Builder schools. Although there were plenty of FCS schools that expressed interest in being in the game, I can't see this ever happening because I'm sure EA would have to make a sizable investment to not only get the rights, but also to make the stadiums, jerseys, etc. accurate, and we just know EA's lazy and they are not going to do that. Wishful thinking, but maybe we could see this return. It was also seamless to be able to move an FCS team into the FBS ranks as well, which was nice. With all the conference realignment madness going on right now, EA might be adding 5 to 6 new schools to the D1 ranks at this rate every year anyways if they're going to come out with a new game. I'm sure I'm missing certain features from the old games, but these were the main ones that came to mind for me when going back and reminiscing and playing the older games. Which feature do you most wish could make a return? Leave us a comment on the video and let us know. Make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to help the channel grow. We're going to have plenty of content about NCAA football games from present to past coming to the channel, so lock in with Spiced Up Gaming.